So dudes, I think everybody should watch more competitive Siege, and I'll explain why. Whether it's at a professional or a semi-professional level, one, I think competitive Siege is really cool, and two, I think you can learn a thing or two from watching it that you normally wouldn't really get out of playing by yourself and trying to learn the game completely from scratch. I elaborated on this point a little bit in the Siege Challenger League co-stream I got to do courtesy of Ubisoft. Thank you again, Ubisoft, for that opportunity. I'll just let the clip roll, and this is trimmed down a little bit since it's directly from the stream, but it gets the point across. I think that even Challenger League, even if it's T2, if you are trying to get better at the game, if you want to learn the game, I think watching really any competitive is going to be really helpful for your skill development, because it's going to give you a lot of context as to how the actual gadgets are used, like what's reinforced, where rotations go, positioning fundamentals, like why this operator is over here, and team play, like how they communicate with each other and how they play off of each other. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to copy paste strats that you see from competitive games and try to incorporate them into your games. And it's probably worthwhile to say some key differences between ranked and comp. First of all, in ranked, people are going to play a lot more aggro. People are going to make more risky engagements, because in ranked, the coordination level, in terms of the information gathering, where drones are, looking at your camera network, things like that, that is at a completely different coordinated level, where people who are getting paid to play the game are practicing over and over and over again as to when somebody's going to be in the drone in this situation versus that situation, early, middle, and late stages of the round. In ranked, mistakes happen often. There are inefficiencies, there are gaps, there are things that people overlook. One thing that I am much more conscientious of, thanks to my competitive play experience and by watching competitive, is my drone usage. Rather than keeping the drone in this room out in the middle of nowhere, I keep it kind of, far away from the door frame, just enough out of sight so that the Azami runs by it, and because of the way the angle works, she doesn't see it. Then I'm able to keep giving live comms on this Azami by the half desk, by CC itself, break door, and even though I lose a drone, we get a pick out of it because somebody is able to pinch her out of place. The person I first learned this drone economy trick from was Hot and Cold, a pro player. A long time ago during a stream, he said that you should treat your drones like operator lives. That's just a fancy way of saying if your drone dies, you should obtain something from it. You should get map control from it. In this example, right? The Azami goes down, my drone goes down. In the process, we get control of break and CC. If the drone had died there, if I had face checked without asking my teammate, hey, can you follow up on this? Can you shoot this guy, right? Look at this window. Here's the guy. He's over here. He's over here. He's over here, right? Giving live comms. If I had just face checked the drone in there without knowing if somebody was going to be there to capitalize on it, that would have been a wasted drone. But because we got map control out of it, that was a good transaction. You should treat everything in Siege on a transactional basis. And if you watch enough competitive Siege, you will see that Siege players treat everything on a transactional basis themselves, because everything has to be done with some kind of purpose. They are also more willing to allocate resources to certain things that you might just completely overlook in ranked. You might look at something in ranked and say, that's stupid, that's a waste of time, why would I do that? In competitive, every single resource, every single little behavior has a ripple effect. A good example of this would be using shotguns or impact grenades for an extended roam to provide routes for your roamers to navigate in case they get caught out. A lot of the time in ranked, people will overlook this. Something that you can do ahead of time to give yourself a lot more flexibility options in terms of your movement so you don't get caught in a situation you don't want to be in is take an operator like Legion, who can be suited to top floor roams, not necessarily side anchoring all the time, but he has a pocket shotgun, right? You can use that pocket shotgun for your roam. Like, a lot of people usually think of pocket shotguns just for site setup for anchors, but you can use it to help out with your roam pathing. You also get opportunities to see operators used to their fullest potential that you normally wouldn't really see in ranked. In this example, Azami shows her ability to extend site holds really well on console at top floor. Azami loves map environments like that, where there's just like a million like desks, furniture, chairs, crap, right, walls. Because she can make an already difficult place to clear with a lot of geometry into something even more difficult. Like, she can just make it into a fucking maze. And Azami doesn't have to stay there, right? Like, she can run away. Because they're going to spend... Look how much time they're spending clearing, right? Just like Grimbees, drones. They're at a minute 30, and, like, they have people that aren't even in the building yet. Now, JJ and Co. did go on eventually to lose this round, but it does kind of get your noggin working a little bit, right? You start to see the game in a transactional way, and you start to understand, even though Azami played an admin here and didn't play for a pick, she didn't get greedy and stay, the fact that they were using nades, Grimbees, etc., wasting time. Look at this, 1:13 in the clock, and it's still a 5v5. Now, ultimately, it came down to gunfights here, but the Azami did her job by setting up the setup and then running away when it was appropriate, not giving up a pick too early. That's how you play the game, or at least that's how you're supposed to play it. You will also get out of this idea that there are bad operators in Siege. Spoiler alert, there are no quote-unquote bad operators in this game. They're just operators that are more suited to different scenarios than others. Even Sens, as you can see here, even though the actual execute with the Sens wall didn't really turn out the way that they anticipated. The purpose of the Sens wall blocking off the head level holes for projector as well as the double door is still a smart premise for a strategy. I'm not kidding when I say you will find every operator in the game used at least once if you watch enough comp. Oh, he's gonna hold Ivy. You can do this from the bottom of the staircase. Look, dude, he's literally playing War Thunder. He's literally playing War Thunder on the staircase, right? Because he can conceal himself and he can shoot the fire grenades behind the shield or behind the staircase. Wait, this is tech! This is tech! Again, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that this makes Tachanka the best operator in the game. I'm not saying that you should even do this in ranked. I'm just saying it gets you to think about the mechanics a little bit differently. Why a Tachanka instead of a smoke? Because Tachanka can reach further with his fire grenades, and when he's on a staircase, he can take advantage of the grenade launcher distance. Smoke doesn't really get that same kind of thing. Ultimately, the Grimbees keep Tachanka pressured out. I don't think one Jaeger ADS is enough to really keep this strat together. I think you need to double up with a Wamai too, especially for Ivy. But that gives you an idea of what the resource game is like in Siege. As you can tell, this stuff excites me enough to try to get me to introduce the game to my roommate, Emily. It makes it different than the other, like, smoke canister guys.
That's cool.
Yeah. I forget what skin that's from.
I play Rocket League, and I'm not even good at it.
I play this game, and I get paid, and I'm not even good at it.
Probably better than I am. Let's be real here.
And she's one of many who feels that these games can be a little intimidating, right? I think that that's a valid stance to have. Siege is a sweaty game. But I think watching games like this can kind of make it a little bit easier to understand, even if you don't necessarily understand everything right away. One of the things I always struggle with in trying to get new players to consider playing the game is that the game just has a lot of moving parts. Here, the parts are distilled into, not necessarily easy to understand variables, but a little bit more boiled down. This is a strat that I've seen pulled out of a hat every once in a while for Villa Aviator games and maybe sometimes Statue. But basically he has a shield here on 90 and he can just fire off this book's kind of walk up here coming out of main. And it's a bit of a niche thing. I mean, obviously if he gets pressured from top red, if they're doing a heavy bore hit, then this isn't going to work very well for, at least not for very long. But at the same time, if he gets early warning, right, about red stairs, he can also fire off all the way down the red staircase as well. So this is even further access because the geometry here, right, there's a lip at which the fire can bounce down the staircase, which is a little bit safer than hitting books. But this is something that I learned from watching PL, and that's a really interesting thing about PL is that you learn after watching it enough that there are no bad operators in Siege. So if you have a main that you really like and you try to bring them in ranked and people, your friends or whoever clown you because they're like, that character's bad, play this character instead. That's not the case, right? Like you can go into the game confidently learning any character that you want. Now, I'm not saying, to bring Tachanka every single round or go ahead, right? It's a free country, for now at least, but there's really no operator that has like completely useless qualities about them. That hasn't really happened since the addition of pre-buff Grim. And what makes Tachanka interesting here, compared to Smoke or compared to Goyo, is that he has distance and actionability, right? Because the fire launcher has an arc to it that is considerably longer than the smoke canisters that Smoke gets, right? He's not going to be able to throw them to this distance. And he has an ACOG on a pretty low recoil, you know, decently high rate of fire gun. If you get up a little bit closer, if you want to play more aggressive on main, you can bounce the fire off of the wall, and that'll get you a deeper cut down the staircase. And this is going to be useful in, you know, the early, middle to middle stages of the round. Maybe not in the late round, you know, when the actual site execute is happening, because you're probably going to get, you know, flushed out of here eventually. But I would say at like the 2 minute, like 1:30 mark, this is not a bad way to delay books pressure. Like, this is completely viable, right? Provided that you have certain things around you, you know, provided you have a certain kind of support system to keep you from getting, you know, naded, capital fired, whatever. Do you think Sens is bad? Think again. A lot of pro teams are using Sens to quickly get control of server, not even necessarily for the bomb site itself, although if you have a couple of these roly-polies in your pocket later on, that's certainly quite helpful. But the basic idea here, right? Usually this hatch is going to be open for square players to play down and then play retake for the actual server stacks themselves. But if you manage to get full square control, right, this works in your favor as an attacker. You throw these against the wall like this, and then it'll roll across, and then anybody who is playing here in the bomb site can't assist their server player. So then this person behind the server stack here is cut off, and then they can get shot from the hatch, from dirt, really anywhere that there's somebody that can maintain some kind of attacking pressure. Regardless of what happens, if you're a solo player here in server, you're kind of dead. Get the plant down. Easy peasy. Combo this up with some capital fire. Any kind of area denial here will work great for an actual site execute. Don't think just because it's T2 that it's like not as useful or not as fundamental in building a skill set for understanding the game. You learn so much even just watching the game at this level. Like, I learn new things all the time. Whenever I see something new, I pretty much always commentate over it. I pick up new stuff all the time, even from this level of play. Like the whole idea of having the double deployable shields there for Chalet top floor. It sounds so simple, but then you see it actually have the kinks ironed out in a competitive environment. Because you might have an idea, you might have a strategy idea that sounds good on paper, but maybe you don't have the pieces that you need to really round it out. Maybe you don't have the, you know, you're not going to have somebody set up like a Mira next to you. You're not going to have an ADS for the shield, and then it doesn't work. And then you're like, well, that kind of, you know, why did I do that? But it just gives you so much contextual awareness of how to understand the game. And I think it can really help you. It can really help you with your skill development. So I always encourage people, if they're trying to get into the game, and they're at a point where they're kind of like thirsty for more knowledge, but they don't really know where to start, just watch some PL, like even Challenger League. Maybe not collegiate. Maybe not. Nothing wrong with collegiate. Maybe, I don't know. But it is always worth watching some competitive, because it just gives you, like I said, so much gadget context. Why is this vertical hole here? Oh, why is that reinforcement there? Why does this rotate there? What do I do when I see this? Do I go this way or do I go that way? Well, if I see a bunch of people over here, then I can go library pressure. If I see a bunch of people over here, I can go solar pressure. How do I break apart this pressure? We can have an Amaru go for the window, and then we break apart all that, you know, the top 4 roam, because you see a gap. And then you just work over from Ivy, right? All that little team play stuff. Those are things you can do with a duo. You don't necessarily have to have a 5 stack to understand it. It's really cool. There may be information overload from the amount of coordination and things happening at the same time, but the actual usage of the game mechanics is trimmed down and boiled down to its essence, and nothing is wasted. This can actually be useful for getting over your information overload, because it allows you to focus on the important parts rather than the rest of the like ranked gunner, whatever the heck, you know, ranked below quick nutty peak kind of crap that you run into in ranked gameplay. Yeah, you still kind of have to deal with that if you want to progress in your skill development, but ultimately it does kind of set up a blueprint for you to work with. And it gives you some tasks to figure out. Why is this operator here? Why is the gadget being used this way? Why are the operators positioned this way? Why are they going 3 guys here, 2 guys here? Why are they going 2 guys here, 2 guys here, and 1 guy here? What's up with this little backstab play? Those are the questions you should be asking if you want to understand the game from a more, all-encompassing point of view. If you're struggling with the gunfighting and that's just what's really kicking your ass, then I think competitive might, be a little too abstract. But I will say it's a lot better to have an idea as to why you're getting fried from a strategic point of view than to not have one at all. Because in many scenarios, you can actually avoid that gunfight entirely, and you may not have even ever realized it. You can make things easier for yourself without having to overcomplicate it and say, well, shit, I guess I got to take this 50-51. There's no other way to do this, right? Sometimes there's another way to skin a cat. This is why football players watch film, right? It's not just important to contextualize, okay, I got tackled here. I need to be strong enough to break the tackle, right? There can be situations where you can just avoid the tackle at all. Somebody down the field missed their timing. Maybe you missed a timing and then you were somewhere on the field where you shouldn't have been. Everything is context dependent in Rainbow Six Siege. And the more competitive you watch, the more, just Siege that you watch, the more Siege you interact with, the more Siege you will understand. Even if you don't necessarily, completely understand it, you will have more context as to why something is taking place. You will have more than you would without it.